One of the main pushbacks that I hear about electric vehicles is that they can't do road trips. I'm going to maybe debunk that, maybe not, we'll see. Today I'm testing how a Tesla will handle a road trip in the winter here in Canada. It is minus 23 degrees Celsius or minus 9 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll be doing a 100-kilometer loop, which is about 60 miles, and seeing how the car handles this. This will answer a lot of questions on if the car can handle a longer term road trip, as we'll be able to see roughly how much percent a car uses out of 100 on a 100-kilometer road trip. I plan to do this test on various temperatures as well as on various tires, summers or winters, to see how the car handles it in various different situations and how much difference all these little things make. For reference, this is a 2024 Tesla Model 3 long range all-wheel drive, and I'm on winter tires, but more on that later. For now, let's jump right into the start of the video. All right, guys, I'm here at my starting point, ready to go. I've got an exact 100-kilometer round trip lined up in my navigation. So I'm starting off at Dollarama, as you can see, and I'll be traveling 30 minutes, 51 kilometers till my U-turn point, at which point I will be heading back to Dollarama. The car estimates I will get back with 43%. Honestly, that's worse than I was kind of expecting, considering I'm starting out with 78. The car thinks I'll use about 35%, which, you know what, I guess that is reasonable. This is going to be a fun opportunity to compare to my recent video where it was minus 20 C all day, which works out to about minus 4 Fahrenheit. And today it's minus 23 Celsius, which is about minus 9 Fahrenheit. So not only am I traveling an extra 33 kilometers to that 67-kilometer round trip that I always do, but I'm also doing it in colder weather. The only difference here is there's no city and there's no stop for 8 hours and having to preheat the car again. And so I thought this would be a really interesting test to see if a road trip 100 kilometers while the battery is already warmed up and there's no stopping and letting it cool down, if that's going to be more efficient than doing 67 kilometers but letting the car freeze again for about 8 hours while I'm at work. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a road trip here for 100 kilometers and listen to some podcasts and just hang out and do regular updates, probably every, 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers every quarter. So I'll do an update to see how things are looking. This should be a pretty fun, interesting test to see if the highway is good in the winter. And this test is on my ART Replica 267 wheels with my Hankook iSept IZ3 winter tires. These are pretty sweet tires that were way cheaper than the Michelin X Ice, and I found they perform just as well, and I saved like 800 bucks. So overall, I am quite happy with these guys. The tire pressure is at 44 to 45 PSI. That's pretty standard for me once the tires warm up a tiny bit. And of course, the interior is always at 20 degrees Celsius, which is 68 Fahrenheit. That's what I always set it to, and I'm always happy and always comfortable with this. Well, I might as well get going here, so I'm gonna get on the road and see how this all begins. It's nice to have a new phone mount here too. Jawa sent this one out to me. I'm gonna have it linked in the description, but it's a wireless charger and it charges the phone and holds the phone, and that's gonna be my new tool to record selfie footage. This is gonna make my selfie recording a lot better. All right, guys, and as always, I'm set to 114 kilometers an hour, which is gonna work out to 70 miles an hour. That's how I do all my testing to make sure everything remains consistent. Also, I almost forgot to mention, and I almost actually forgot to do this in general, is 100-kilometer trip test. So I set the trip probably half a kilometer after I started. Should be extremely accurate still, but yeah, this is going to be what we're basing the trip off of. And the weather. So the weather is minus 22 C, pretty much exactly what I had said earlier, but yeah, this is going to be the weather, and this is the forecast for the rest of the day. It's going to be minus 22 for this whole drive, so slightly colder than the day where I drove 67 kilometers and used 29%. 29% is the number to beat. However, I'm doing about 34 more kilometers than that day. So it will be really interesting to see if the extra 33 kilometers is offset at all by leaving the car for 8 hours in minus 20 C unplugged. So I'm really excited to see how this goes. But yeah, I'm on the highway and we are moving, and so far nothing to report. I just got it set in full self-drive and I'm just gonna watch the car drive me there. It should be extremely casual here since, yeah, on the highway pretty much nothing can go wrong. So we'll see how this goes. Not a bad view either from where my phone is mounted. I can just kind of do this once in a while to show what we're looking at. I mean, this is what I'm seeing when I'm driving in FSD, and this is what a Canadian highway looks like here in Saskatchewan. Anybody interested to come and visit? Doesn't look too exciting to me, but I've seen some interesting comments saying they kind of want to come and see it. I'll give you credit. There is nothing like it. There's not too many places in the world where a highway looks like this. While I'm going here too, I just want to mention, if you're considering a Tesla or know somebody that is, make sure you're using a referral link, whether it's a friend or family or mine, which is going to be very close to the top of the description of this video and all my videos. You're going to get a discount. It varies from $1,000 US to 1,300 Canadian and whatever else it may be in any European countries. It varies all over the place, but make sure you're using a referral code. I would really appreciate that. 15 kilometers into this test and current watt hours per kilometer, 276. That is absolutely brutal. That is twice the EPA rated range, and I started with a warm battery, you guys. My battery's at 13 Celsius. To To me, that's warm. At least I rarely see it go any higher than this, especially in Saskatchewan. We'll see about the summer, but I bought this car in winter and I've never seen the battery go much above this ever since I got the sexy knob from Enhance Auto. This product is also in the description if you want to check this out, but this thing is cool for hotkeying all kinds of random stuff on the car. But another fun one is it shows your battery temp. Another fun option is if I press the button there, I can actually manually precondition for supercharging without navigating to a supercharger. That is a really cool feature that I know a lot of people want, and the sexy knob lets you do it. So this is a really cool product by a really cool team. This is not sponsored at all, but they did send this out to me and I can't say enough good about it. But yeah, I'm really hoping that this gets better really soon, because 274, not great. I really am expecting the watt hours per kilometer or watt hours per mile. I'm gonna have those both up on screen here too throughout the video. I'm expecting this to get a lot better as the drive goes on, because really minus 23 Celsius, not that cold. Minus 9 Fahrenheit, it's not that cold. I mean, it's brisk for sure, but it's not the coldest weather by any means that we have here. And as you see in my videos, this is going to be one of the warmer videos that I do, all things considered. But I do plan to do more rotations of this 100 kilometer round trip in various temperatures on various tires. Maybe even if I get mud flaps, we'll see if that makes a difference. I really do plan to do a whole bunch of testing on this exact route, as well as my work route. So I'll have a 100 kilometer round trip with no stops. I'm also going to have my 67 kilometer round trip with an 8-hour stop in the middle as my two routes, and I think that is a really healthy mix to really make sure I get some good testing data. I thought as everything warmed up and I just kind of got settled into cruise control or full self-drive on the highway, that my watt hours per kilometer would get better, because to be doubling the EPA rated range at only minus 23 Celsius or minus 9 Fahrenheit, kind of crappy. That's not that amazing. I really was expecting to see numbers right around 210 or 215 watt hours per kilometer, and so I really do hope it gets closer to that. Based on the current trip here, I am at 25 kilometers into the drive, 7 kilowatt hours used, and 268 watt hours per kilometer has been my average. So it is getting slightly better here as time goes on. But yeah, I'm still really expecting or hoping to see this come down somewhat substantially, but we will keep going. All right, well, I'm 40 kilometers into the drive. I'm at 261 watt hours per kilometer. So this is ever so slightly getting better. And I've used 10 kilowatt hours already. And also, and notably, I have used 15%. So I'm at 63% remaining, started at 78. So 15% for 40 kilometers. It's not some interesting numbers too that you can just kind of extrapolate, knowing what you can expect on a road trip at this speed in temperatures like this, minus 24. So it's actually colder than what I thought it was going to be. But you know, we're right around that minus 23, 24 number in Celsius. All right, I'm about to hit my turnaround point in about a minute. Car was bang on with the prediction of getting here with 60%, so that's good. And here we are at 49 kilometers, 13 kilowatt hours used, and an average of 259 watt hours per kilometer. Not too bad. But I'm going to take over here since I think I just have a roadside pullover for the car, and it's going to just pull over randomly. So I'm going to manually turn this thing around and get back going on the highway. And there's lots of snow on the side there. Lots of snow everywhere here. And off we go back home. This definitely makes me want to do a winter road trip. And since it's not usually colder than minus 23 or so during the day, I mean, overnight it gets into the 30s for sure, and oftentimes it does get to 30 during the day, but chances are when you go on a road trip, if you plan it ahead at all, it's not going to be colder than this. And so this is a really good benchmark or a good yardstick to see exactly how much I can expect to be charging and how I can expect the range to be and such. Kind of right on pace to be using 35% every 100 kilometers. Break that down. I mean, that's not even 300 kilometers for a full battery. And my full battery is rated for 548 kilometers. Obviously, yeah, that is pretty close to half the rated range when it's this cold. However, anywhere that I need to go, whether I'm going to Edmonton, a lot of you guys around here will know the road trip to Edmonton from Saskatoon. There's North Battleford, then there's Lloydminster, then Vegreville, then Edmonton, and Edmonton's only 550k as it is. And so there's 3 supercharger stops. All of them are near a Tim Hortons, which is Canadian Dunkin' Donuts if you're an American viewer. They're always near various nice places to stop. And so if you only have to go like 150 to 175 kilometers every round, and then you charge for about 20 minutes, that's not that bad. That's totally doable, and that's not even that much of a detour if you consider, you know, you're going to go in for a bathroom break, or someone is, or the kids need to get out to run around and stretch, or whatever it is if you have kids in the picture. So honestly, how I see this is really not a concern for a road trip in the winter. And this is kind of a worst case scenario, right? It to get slightly colder than this, but not much, like I said. And I can easily do a road trip anywhere in Canada, even here in the barren prairies where there's not a lot going on along the highways. We still do have these superchargers every 100 miles or so. At this point, I'm not concerned. But yeah, we'll see how this goes when we get back and I'll get the final results. But honestly, it's looking like it's going to be literally bang on the projection. We'll have 43% arrival, which is 35% total used for 100 kilometers going speed limit, mind you. And I'd say there's not too much wind, pretty average, small amount of wind. We'll see if the car on the energy graph at the end of this drive tells us there was much wind. But for now, really, I'm not feeling much wind at all here. And also, I'm really impressed with my winter tires. I didn't get EV rated winter tires, hand-cooked icept winter 3s or icept 3s, something like that. I forget what it was. They're really solid winter tires, but they are not EV rated. They were quite a lot cheaper than the Michelin X Ice, which a lot of Tesla owners use, but I wasn't willing to drop an extra $700 on, you know, a fancy name or a fancy tire. And I'm really, really glad with what I ended up getting here because they are so quiet. The traction is amazing on these things. And the range, I'm not sure if I've gained or lost much since I was not doing amazing on range as it is on the factory tires. But yeah, I'm happy with my tires so far. I'll probably try to do a video just like this on the day that I change my tires. That's going to be a bit of a boring video doing 2 100-kilometer loops, but it might be worth doing just to see, you know, do the drive on the winters, an hour later after I change my own tires, do the drive on those things and see how much difference the range makes. As boring as that could be, I think that's a valuable video for all you guys. So let me know if you'd like to see me doing a back-to-back range test on a 100-kilometer loop. That would ensure that I have the same weather conditions, the same wind, the same temperature for the battery. I think that would just be a really fair test. But yeah, let me know if you'd like to see that. And back to this test, I'm at 65 kilometers in, 16 kilowatt hours used, and average of 255 watt hours per kilometer. So not bad. I mean, it's kind of what we're locking into, but that 255, that number's slowly dropping. We started in the 270s, right? So this is getting better, but not much better than double the EPA rated range. And still on track to get back with 43%. And of course, we're still at 114 or 70 miles an hour and currently at 55%. So we truly are chugging through the battery here for how not long this test is taking. This is pretty much a 1 hour loop. And so yeah, I'm probably going to use 35% an hour, and that's probably what you can expect if you're on a road trip in conditions as cold as this, which I'd say not bad, not great, is what it is, but definitely doable when you consider how close the superchargers are. Because a lot of the time I have friends and family who aren't as nerdy about this stuff as I am and haven't looked into it and just don't know what the car is capable of. And they say, you can't go to Vancouver, you can't go to Edmonton, you can't go to Calgary. No offense, Winnipeg, we don't really ever come east unless it's for work or sports or something. Still love you guys out in Manitoba, but yeah, we don't travel out there for leisure too much. It's usually going west towards the mountains. But in terms of heading west, it's pretty simple in this car. And a lot of people just aren't aware because of what they've heard of EVs doing really bad in the winter. And so I'm really excited to be testing this. And then when I pull out like stuff like a better route plan or even just in the car and I navigate to, let's say, Kelowna or Vancouver, and it shows all the stops. It takes, 5 or 10 seconds to calculate, and then it shows all the stops I'm going to make on the entire road trip, and it shows that you can get to Vancouver. And yeah, you're stopping for 20 minutes, 25, even 30 minutes at a time. Sometimes if there's a really long stretch you're going to go without charging. Realistically, it's so doable, especially if you don't mind getting out to stretch your legs every hour and a half or so. Totally doable. And personally, I like to stop every 90 minutes or so to just get up, walk around. I get a little bit sleepy. I get a little bit tired when driving long distances and not doing anything. So I love to get up and just move, and I find that wakes me up. And so before I got this for years, when I lived in BC and I drove back and forth, I would stop anyway. And so this car really does fit into my lifestyle. It might not fit into yours, and that's fine. If you like to cannonball for 5 hours straight and just give her and not stop, and then just get gas every 4 or 5 hours, yeah, Tesla might not be for you. In the summer it might be, but in the winter, nope, Tesla might not be for you. 80% of the drive done, that's 80 kilometers, exactly 20 kilowatt hours, so that makes an easy math. 248 watt hours per kilometer, so pretty much 250. We're almost getting 4 kilometers per kilowatt hour, and so yeah, that makes this pretty simple to calculate, but pretty dangerously close to double the EPA rated range too. Currently sitting at 50% and scheduled to arrive at 43. This has still been exactly perfectly bang on. So that's pretty cool to see. Still got about a kilometer to go, but it's at 100K. So I was very close to getting the 100K even, but these are the numbers for the actual 100K. I will do a full breakdown here. It's probably gonna be 101 or 102 by the time I get back. All right, guys, 100-kilometer round trip loop has been completed. I had 0 intervention with full self-drive in case that's interesting to you, except for, of course, the U-turn, which I already explained. Otherwise, it was completely smooth. Even with cars turning onto the highway and such, it adjusted perfectly. But as for results, this is what I achieved. So 102 kilometers, ever so slightly over, but we're going to count that as pretty much bang on, and this will be my route every time. 24 kilowatt hours used. Total cost of that is $3.60 based on my power rate of 15 cents per kilowatt hour. I know for a fact in my previous vehicle, being a 2010 Honda Civic, that 100 kilometers would have used about 8 to 8.5 liters. And based on current prices here of $1.50 Canadian per liter, that's about $12. And so this is pretty close to 4 times cheaper, not quite $3.60 versus $12. Yeah, if you even just do a 100 kilometer trip to go see some friends or go do something, you're saving a bunch of money every single time. And you know, $8 or $9 doesn't sound like a ton, but if you do this 40 times a year, 50, 60, 100, 200 times a year, depending on where you're driving, this is going to save you an absolute fortune. So that's kind of a cool touch too, that I ended up saving that much money just to do a 100 kilometer round trip, exact same as in the gas car. Only cool thing is I'm going to get home and I'm just going to plug this thing in and get all my juice back. No need to go and freeze my hands off touching a gas handle. Managed to actually end up beating the projected rate as well. So 44% remaining, which means we used 34% instead of 35%. That is honestly not too bad considering I used 29% state of charge to go 67 kilometers. However, I left the car outside for 8 hours. And you know what? I have to say, I thought this would do a little bit better. I'm kind of surprised that this didn't get closer or even tie it. I thought that leaving the car outside for 8 hours to just freeze at minus 20 Celsius or minus 4 Fahrenheit, I thought that that would do a little more damage to my overall, you know, preconditioning and letting the car reheat back up and get the battery up to temperature. But honestly, that extra 33 kilometers, that would have used a little more than the 5% difference that we saw in the video here, but not a ton. Like, that actually didn't add as much as I thought it was going to. I am kind of surprised at the result that I got here. And over the course of the 100 kilometers, the watt hours per kilometer definitely got a lot better. So 237 watt hours per kilometer, which is 381 watt hours per mile, is my final number for the 100 kilometer round trip in roughly minus 23 Celsius, which is roughly minus 10 Fahrenheit. That is my result for this video. I think that was a pretty good success. I think this is really informing to know that 100 kilometers uses pretty much a third of your battery. And just for demonstration purposes here, if I type in Vancouver, let's see what it's going to give me for a route. And so it's calculating, crazy drive. But yeah, so based on starting at 44%, you got to keep that in mind. This is a rough starting point. It's going to get me to stop in Saskatoon for 25 minutes. Then it's going to get me to stop in Kindersley for 28 minutes. Hanna, Alberta for 26 minutes. Rocky View, so this is basically Calgary, for 10 minutes only. Canmore, Alberta, this is where things really start to get beautiful, for 15 minutes. Golden, BC, 13 minutes. Revelstoke for 24. And then Kamloops for 20 minutes. Hope, BC for 13. And finally, Vancouver. So yeah, that's a lot of charging stops, but also that is a massive amount of kilometers traveled. And this is all a little bit skewed because I'm starting with 44%, right? But yeah, I mean, this just goes to show that you can do it based on this weather. And from what I've learned here from going 100 kilometers and actually saving 1% compared to the projection, I feel very safe to arrive at all these superchargers with 10%. Because even if the car is off, I don't know, a couple percent, it's still going to get me there with 6 or 7 or 8. And even worst case scenario, I'll get closer to 0. I know that there's a buffer. Out of Spec Reviews has done this. He gets like 20 miles past 0. And so I really have zero fear to trust the car to get me there at the supercharger with 10% each time. And if you get there at 10% and it's preconditioning the whole time, you're going to get some really fast rates and you're going to be back on your way really quick. So yeah, I think this is a big victory. I think this is a fun test to do. I'm definitely going to do it again on my summer tires. I would like to do it right at around 0 degrees. So right around the freezing point and see how much better I can do, because 237 watt hours per kilometer, not bad. Definitely not great. It's still cool to see that I can expect to get that. And more importantly, if you're driving a long distance, the car is also adjusting to that and it's also projecting your range accordingly. Thank goodness it's not projecting my range according to the EPA rated, because then I would be absolutely up the creek and I would be screwed and I would never make it anywhere. But the car is very realistic with the conditions. All right, friends, that being said, if you stuck around till the end of this video, I appreciate you so much. Comment if you did. Comment your thoughts on what my results were on this video. Maybe comment something you'd like to see. And of course, leave a like to help me boost that algorithm. Subscribe if you want to see more as well. I'll go through all those things since sometimes you might forget to subscribe, but you might want to see more. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see all you guys on the next test.